Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. So in this particular video, we are going to discuss in detail about two important phenomena that you have to study in geography, that is weathering and mass movement. These phenomena are example of what we can call as geomorphic process. So we'll also try to understand that what is geomorphic process. So let us try to understand these topics in detail. So first of all, as you know that on the Earth's surface, there are a variety of physical and chemical interactions that take place, and also several natural forces act upon the Earth's surface, and as a result of the physical changes, as a result of these chemical changes, and also as an outcome of the impact of these natural forces, various different types of landform develop on the Earth's surface. For example, we have a diverse type of geographical feature that we see on the Earth's surface. For example, some place we have mountains, we have plateaus, we have plains, we have deep valleys, we have canyons. So these all features that we see today are an outcome of the physical, chemical, and natural forces. So the processes that occur on the Earth's surface and their effect or impact are determined largely by a lot of environmental variables, natural variables, and the example of these variables are geology. That means the overall topography, overall the rock structure of that particular area of the Earth, the climate that is existing or persisting in the particular part of the Earth, the natural vegetation that is developing and growing there, the base level, that means the height of that particular region of the Earth from the sea level, and also the human interference to a large extent are responsible for causing changes on the Earth's surface. So the nature of the process and the rate at which it operates, thus can we say, will be influenced by change in any of these variables that we have discussed right now. And these changes that happens on the Earth's surface, that happens on in a gradual manner, many times changes happen in a very rapid manner. All this can be collectively called as geomorphic changes or geomorphic process. So if we talk about geomorphic process, we can classify into various categories. The geomorphic process can happen due to two forces. One force we can call as endogenic forces, and the other forces we can call as exogenic forces. Now, endogenic forces are such forces which is exerted on the Earth's surface and is originating from below the Earth's surface. That means it is originating either from the mantle or below the crust layer of the Earth. On the other hand, exogenic forces are something that generally we see existing or that applies themselves on the surface of Earth. And example of such exogenic forces are river, flow of water in the river, the movement of the wind, the movement of the sea waves that causes changes in the coastal area of the landmass, as well as the movement of the glaciers in the colder regions of the Earth. So due to the movement of these different agents, these different exogenic forces, we see erosional work as well as depositional work, and thus development of erosional landforms as well as depositional landforms occur. On the other hand, if we talk about endogenic forces, that means the forces that is emanating from below the Earth's surface, it can also be classified further into two categories. One kind of endogenic force we can call as a sudden force, whose impact we see very suddenly without any kind of intimation, and the other forces are a slow forces which act over a period of thousands and even sometimes millions of years. The example of sudden forces which impact we see very suddenly are earthquake, volcanoes, as well as landslides. On the other hand, endogenic forces which are slow in nature can be classified into diastrophic forces, and diastrophic forces are responsible for building mountain, and such forces sometimes are also called as orogenic or orogenetic forces. On the other hand, the forces which are responsible for development of a large scale of continents are sometimes referred as epirogenetic forces. Thus, diastrophic forces are of two types: orogenetic forces and epirogenetic forces, which either build mountain or build continental landmasses. So this is overall development and classification of different types of forces causing different types of changes on the surface of Earth. So out of all these changes, today we are going to focus upon the changes that is brought due to erosional work of exogenic forces, that is weathering and mass movement. So let us start with the weathering phenomena. In simple terms, weathering can be defined as the breaking down or dissolving or disintegration of rocks and minerals on the Earth's surface. This breaking down, dissolution, and disintegration can be brought by two changes. Either it can be due to the mechanical disintegration or mechanical changes, sometimes referred as physical changes. On the other hand, chemical changes, chemical disintegration can also cause weathering. Not only that, since weathering happens in the area where agents of erosions are moving, it is an in situ process. That means the weathering does not happen from one place to other place. Weathering happens in the area where we have the movement of the agents of erosion. Thus, it is an in situ process. Now, how can we classify the types of weathering? So, on the basis of what kind of changes we are witnessing or what is the reason behind or cause behind these changes, we can classify the weathering into chemical weathering, physical weathering, and the biological weathering. So, first of all, let us try to understand what is chemical weathering. So, as clear from the name itself, chemical weathering is the weathering which happens due to the chemical reaction or a chemical activity. For example, the most common chemical weathering is something we can call as solution. Solution is if suppose we have a land surface, we have a surface on the earth which is made up of such kind of material which is easily soluble in water. So if water is flowing over that particular kind of surface, we'll see reaction with water and thus it will cause weathering. The best example of such surface is limestone, which is also called as karst surface or karst topography. Limestone, as we know, is easily soluble in water, and thus when the rainwater or the river water flows over the karst topography, it causes dissolution and solution of these limestone particles, and thus large amount of valley-like structure, cave-like structure, sinkhole-like structure develop. On the other hand, we also have weathering that happens due to reaction of certain minerals, certain rocks with the oxygen, that is called as oxygenation. We also had changes in the or weathering that happens due to reaction with acids, reaction with organisms that produces acid, and not only that, we also have carbonation, that is reaction with carbon dioxide. Carbon monoxide also produces a kind of weathering. So such kind of weathering we can classify as chemical weathering. If we talk about physical weathering are such kind of weathering which happens mainly as an impact of gravitational pull of the earth or gravitational attraction of the earth. Other way how weathering can happen is, for example, we have sudden change in temperature that is happening within the rocks, that is also called as freeze thaw impact. This is the most common method of physical weathering. So let us try to understand this in slightly more detail. So in this freeze thaw impact, what happens that suppose, as we can see from this particular diagram, we have a rock structure where there is a small gap in the rock structure. So when there is a small gap, sometimes water gets collected. Water can come from either river, lakes, or even rainwater. So they get collected here. Now in the night time or winter time, if there is a sudden drop in temperature, then this water that is accumulated here can freeze and convert into ice. Now due to conversion of this water into ice, it will cause extra pressure to develop around these rock layers. So due to this, a crack will widen, or the gap that we have seen here will widen. Then further again, when the temperature rises, ice will melt, ice will thaw, and again water will ice will convert into water, and thus again what will happen, water will get more deeper into the cracks. Again we'll have the same process that will be repeated again and again. There's a crack that has developed in the rocks will keep on becoming larger in size, and also overall the penetration of this water will keep on going longer and deeper in the rocks, and thus after some period of time, what we can expect is the rock will split apart into two different separate rocks. This is the most common example of the physical weathering. Physical weathering can also happen if extra pressure is applied over rock. And due to this extra pressure, rocks can further break down. And finally, as we have discussed, gravitational pull can cause the rocks to slide down a steep slope. And during the process of sliding, it can come in contact with different types of rock. It can hit the other pieces of rock, and thus in the process can break the rocks into multiple pieces. So this is the examples and the process of physical weathering. Biological weathering refers to weathering that happens due to biological agents of erosion. For example, we have burrowing animals are there. For example, rabbits are there, rats are there, mouse or moles are there. So when these burrowing animals burrow kind of hole or dig a hole inside the ground surface, new layers of earth surface are then exposed to various agents of erosion. It can be physical agents, it can be chemical agents, and thus it also leads to biological weathering. Also, human intervention by the form in the terms of plowing and cultivation also causes weathering, because during the plowing and cultivation, a lot of different layers of earth are there. In the upper surface, they get mixed up, and thus different types of chemicals act on them. On the other hand, decay of plant and animal matter can also cause production of acids such as humic acids, weak organic acids that can further cause weathering of the rock structure. Not only that, many times you might have seen that we have certain plants and trees whose roots grow deeper and deeper into the rocks, and as they expand in this rock layer, due to the pressure of these roots, the rock layers start to disintegrate and then start to fragment. That is also example of biological weathering. So these are the three examples of weathering: chemical weathering, physical weathering, and biological weathering. Now, the most important question that comes into our mind that what is the main impact of weathering phenomena? So the first impact we have to understand is the exfoliation. Exfoliation refers to a phenomena where we have a rock slab and due to different agents of erosion, due to different forces of erosion and different natural forces that is acting upon these rocks, a part of these rocks simply breaks away, or the outer part of these rocks simply break away. And when this outer part of this rock simply break away, the inner part of rock is exposed, and this inner part of rock, which was till now not exposed to the nature, is much more smoother in nature, and also this new rock layer that has developed will be much more smaller in nature. So development of a smooth and small rock piece or rock fragment is what we can call as exfoliation. The second impact is we have development of soil and regolith that also happen due to weathering. As we have discussed before, we have suppose a rock that is igneous rock. For example, due to the volcanic event in the Deccan Peninsula, we have development of volcanic igneous rock in this region, and when the agent of erosion act upon this rock layer, large amount of sediments are generated, and due to the development of these sediments, further when they are disintegrated more, soil layers can also develop. And that is why we see in Deccan Peninsula, due to the erosion of volcanic rock, we have development of black soil which is very fertile in nature, especially with reference from reference of development of growth or cultivation of cotton and tobacco. The third major impact of weathering you can see is mass twisting, which we are going to discuss in a while. Erosion as well as mineral also develop, because when weathering happens, large number of different minerals are there. They become concentrated in a same area, and as the concentration of these minerals grow, such as iron can be there, or we can have a bauxite can be there, these can then utilize for the national economy. So these are the major impact of the weathering. So coming to the most important impact of weathering is mass movement. So what we understand by the term mass movement? Mass movement in simple terms, sometimes it also called as mass twisting, and refers to the bulk movement or huge large scale movement of the soil and the rock debris down slopes in the response to the pull of gravity. Now this is a very important point, because whenever we talk about mass movement, other agents just basically fades away. We do not take into consideration the impact of weathering. We do not take into consideration the impact of the flood. We do not take into consideration under the consideration the impact of any other natural agents. The only major force here is the force of gravity, and it is under the influence of gravity we have rapid or gradual sinking of the earth's ground surface also happens in a predominantly vertical direction, which we can call as mass movement or mass wasting. Mass movement on slopes and sinking mass movements are often aided by water, and the significance of both types of the part each plays in the alteration of land. So obviously the other agents will play a role here. For example, the movement of water, movement of air, movement of ice and glaciers, but the major force that is responsible for mass movement is the impact of gravity. Now mass movement can further be classified into four different categories depending on what kind of movement we are witnessing. So first kind of mass movement is what we can call as rockfall. Rockfall can be simply defined as when the fragment of rock break away from a larger rock and thus under the impact of gravity fall down from the cliff face due to the weathering phenomena. It can be associated with weathering phenomena in the freeze thaw effect that we have discussed right now, and thus due to the falling down of these individual pieces of rock from a steep vertical cliff in the downward direction can be called as rockfall. Keep in mind here the rockfall basically does not talk about a large scale or mass movement of huge pieces or huge debris, but it generally talk about the movement of individual rock piece. The second kind of mass movement can be called as landslides. Landslide is when we have a large block of rock suddenly slide in the downhill direction, that we generally see in the mountainous areas, in the hilly areas, especially if you have the rainy season. Third kind of mass movement is what we can call as mudslides. Mudslide is when there is huge volume water that has accumulated in the mountainous or hilly areas, and as the water build up in this hilly areas, you have the soil that becomes saturated with water, and as the soil becomes much more saturated with water, suddenly it flows in a downward direction along the slope, and such kind of movement is called as mudslide. The fourth kind of mass movement we can call as slumping. In slumping, what happens? We have a saturated soil that slumps along the curved surface. This is sometimes also called as a backward rotation. because when such kind of movement happens, it seems that the soil layer, the saturated soil layer, is rotating in backward direction with reference to the movement plane or the plane of movement. So such kind of mass movement has been given the name of slumping. So rockfall, landslide, mudslide, and slumping, these are four major categories of mass movement that we see around ourselves. So that is all about this particular video. I hope you understood about the weathering and mass movement in a brief. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. Thank you very much.